Yeah. So I just recollected another moment in life that was kind of odd, but some people might say, well, it's easily explainable, and that was where my mind went to. We often drove to Gregory to visit my aunt and uncle down there. And one night we were driving, and I don't remember what time of year it was exactly. I know it was summertime, but we saw these floodlights hovering above the ground, slowly moving. And we stopped and we were like, what is that? What the heck is that? And pulled over, shut the vehicle off, got out, and we couldn't hear anything. I for sure thought I was going to hear the blades of a helicopter because this thing was moving at the speed a helicopter would probably go. But it had like four floodlights, and it was like lighting up the ground really bright. And then my mind was kind of like, well, maybe it's a helicopter that's got a silencer on it. I don't know if you remember. Um, well, back then there was a lot of stories about cattle being slaughtered and like having precision cuts in them and all this weird cattle mutilations going on. And it's kind of where my head went at first, and then like, what was that show, Airwolf? But I remember them like they were talking about how they had this technology to silence the rotor blades of a helicopter. But it was just kind of one of them moments where you're like, never really thought about it that much, and it just popped into my head, so I thought I'd share it. But like, the mind wants to make sense out of it right away. So yeah, I was talking about what ancient aliens and all that stuff. Um, there are buildings that just make no sense at all. And I've talked about the pyramids. And the size of the blocks there, it's humanly impossible to move those with even today's equipment. Could we make something to do it? I think we probably could. Um, you'd have to have a lot of manpower, and it would cost a ton of money to make the machines that would be needed. I mean, we got mega machines all over the place doing things that's like crazy. But you're talking about industries that like, is anybody going to want to spend that much money just to prove that they could do these blocks? The problem is you could move these blocks and you could get your base made, the first layer, maybe. Even then, it would be kind of hard to get all these blocks placed in the right exact spot, cut perfectly. And they're everywhere. Like, there's certain spots where the ancient texts talk about the ancients making these spots, and these were spots that they talked about. And um, one place was Lebanon, another place was um, the the pyramids, and I'm trying to think. There was another place too that I don't remember. Supposedly they built something somewhere else in the Americas, South America. Could be Peru, because after the flood they ran around and they found out that the floods kind of opened things up and caused some like big gashes in the earth and exposed a lot of gold. And that's one thing about gold is very dense and heavy. And while other rocks might be going down the river and all that stuff, big chunks of gold would just probably sit there. Yeah, and this story about these people that were looking for gold. So, like, wasn't real long ago that I started listening to some of these stories, and it was on YouTube. One of the places I'll tell you, it was Boaz Mysteries, and they talk a lot about this ancient alien stuff, and I think what they're doing is they're taking books from certain authors and they're using AI to narrate these books, and they're interesting. They could be 3 hours, and it's just, you know, if you're driving along and you're listening to this stuff, man, I mean, I've taken I don't know how many trips to Nebraska from here, and you know, it's a 5-hour drive. And I listen to these things, and I'm like, these are some crazy, insane stories. But if you think about it, makes sense of a lot of things. And I know a lot of people are like, well, there's no evidence of this and there's no evidence of that. And I'm like, well, sometimes the evidence is in what you already know. And this is what I know. Evolution doesn't work. There is things in the human genome that show that something's played with it. We are not the same as monkeys. We are not. And there's something going on in the chromosomes too that don't make any sense. Scientists are like, you know, there's a missing link. Somewhere there's a missing link and we can't find it. And we've known this for a long time. So then you have the creationists, you know, talking about this. Well, it just depends on how you interpret it. This being comes out of nowhere and just makes everything in 6 days, and humans, animals, everything. Just everything's made. Pow, click, spank, boom. Now, somewhere in between, there's the truth. I just whistled. Woohoo, I know how to whistle now. I just keep my broken tooth, I guess. And I've always wondered about that. And that's always stuck in my mind because, like, there's something going on. Well, eventually they'll dig something up, right? So I'm listening to these stories, and in some stories they're called Annunaki. Some stories are called the Ananu, I think. Am I saying that right? Anyway, like there's a Sumerian text, and then there's the texts that come after that, the Babylonians, the Assyrians, and the Akkadians. And some of this is just a mixture of all of them. There's also the Hindus also have a story, and you know, there's several creation stories. And I'm trying to put it all together by, you know, taking them all in and going, okay, what makes more sense? Well, there was one guy, he put it this way. He said, you can't make me believe that a magic fairy came out of somewhere and just went poof, 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 poof. And the earth was built first, and then the sun was built after that, and then, you know, it is kind of a wild story. And there's a lot of inconsistencies, and there's a lot of, like I said, the Noah story, some of that just don't make any sense. How can somebody want somebody to gather up all these animals when he could just like poof, 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 poof. The stories don't match up. Sorry. So these aliens decide they're gonna, well, there's a whole another story that is crazy, and maybe I should start from the beginning and kind of see, you guys can go look this stuff up too. But this guy named Enki, he kind of hired a scribe to take down all the accounts, the history of both them and the history of the humans. And he did this on purpose. And the more you learn about Enki and these deities, the more you're going to be like, okay, I see where this is going. I see where this is going. And it makes a lot of sense to me. Maybe it won't to you. So he has his scribe sit down and take notes for 40 days and 40 nights. He gave him some bread and water, and he said, for 40 days and 40 nights, you're going to eat this bread and you're going to drink this water, and it's going to take care of you, sustain you for 40 days and 40 nights, and you'll be good. And you're going to take down everything I say. And so he starts talking, and he starts talking about his home planet and how they started out a lot like our history. There was small tribes. They started kind of like becoming warring factions. They were trying to take over, certain areas, and they were fighting over, probably fighting over, damn it, train of thought, resources. And then, they just kept getting bigger, and then they were like trying to get bigger, safety in numbers, and one guy was going to be in control of the tribe, and he was going to dictate what everybody was doing, and this was global. And then, eventually, their primitive weapons turned into more sophisticated weapons as they went on. Sound familiar? Sounds a lot like our history, right? And then the weapons just got more and more, and the unions got bigger and bigger. The people, and to the point where it got to the north and south, and they had like a lot of weapons like we had, and even more powerful weapons than we even have now. And they were kind of like nuking each other, and they were at war and trying to dominate the planet. Well, then at one point they decided they were gonna, just they were gonna stop. They were gonna have peaceful. They made a deal where either the north or the south was gonna pick a guy, and they were gonna sit on the throne. They were gonna sit, and they had like their capital city where that was gonna be the center of everything, and that guy would have to marry somebody from the opposite side, and that's how they started their unions with the kings and queens. And it's very paralleled to how our history of kings and queens and stuff were to our leaders. So I'm gonna have to wait and get on this next video to kind of explain some of this stuff, because I ain't gonna have enough time right now. But they started figuring out and coming to an agreement with, they also had like a council of the 7 wisest men, or wisest people, I shouldn't say men, but the wise ones, and they would help figure it all out. And so some of the stuff they did was crazy, and I'll get into that in the next video. Love you. See you next time.